Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, July 13th, 2016. Time for another show to begin. Somebody, quick, give me some ideas on the radio. Send ideas. That's our little code. What do you got today? Well, I'll tell you what we've got. We've got Greg Dworkin. Although usually by this time I've seen stories and I have some idea of where we're going. It's all a mystery today. Except I do have one thing he slipped me last night. So I assume that will be on our agenda today, and I don't mean roofie either. He hardly ever does that anymore. Wow. Okay, so today's piece, just by way of previewing it, Rolling Stone will be on our call list today. Rolling Stone's piece, Texas's gun culture and politics made Dallas shooting inevitable. Christopher Hooks on that one. I'm sure we'll get some discussion on that. Plenty of other things to pick up on and discuss as well. Plus, of course, Wednesday, a Joan McCarter Day. Now, it is Netroots Nation week, and so many of you, including Wink, the famed Wink of the After Show, is on travel today on his way to Netroots Nation. Joan is not, so thankfully we may have her available, and I only have to say may have her available because it's summer. Summer hours take over at Daily Co's world headquarters and associated satellite offices around the globe as well. People are on vacation. People are on vacation who are not going to Netroots Nation. And Netroots Nation, not a vacation usually necessarily. It's lots of fun, but not a vacation necessarily for those who attend in their professional capacity as Daily Co's writers. And there is a Daily Co's contingent there and probably already on the ground and all of that stuff, but I'm not going. I will be here manning the desk. Justice will be there manning his desk. Wink will man a desk at Netroots Nation, and do stop by. They'll be on Radio Row, and lots of the Netroots radio folks represented there, doing shows, doing live work, doing all kinds of crazy fly by the seat of your pants live programming to bring you the closest to live experience that is possible over radio. And then let's further clarify that by saying streaming internet radio, and then clarify again by saying streaming internet radio paid for by volunteers and donors like you. Yes, you should probably consider during the week stopping by Netroots Radio and their website and maybe seeing about dropping a few bucks in the kitty there to help it keep going. This is done mostly out of people's pockets. Mostly with, well, and oftentimes the help of your pockets, so we thank you. And same as with this show. One of these days I'll get serious about telling people, yes, do please join in supporting the show month to month, either through Patreon or through PayPal, whether you want to do a one-time donation or you would like to do a recurring monthly support donation. It helps me, at least at this point, make sure that I can at least give some token appreciation to Scott Anderson, who spends every afternoon cleaning up in post-production for us and helping us get the podcast summaries posted, so that if you are wandering by and you want to know, hey, which show is this? Or maybe looking through old archives. Is this the one I wanted to download? Helps keep a record of what we do. Provide you with all the links to the articles that I read about so you can read them for yourself and decide whether I'm right, Greg's right, Armando is right, whoever it is. Always get to decide for yourself on this show. And it would be impossible to both do that and conduct the rest of my life. So I like to be able to send some token thanks to Scott. It would be great if I could send more than token support, and we could be sure of, the future of equipment and stuff here. But we're okay. And I think we're getting to the point where if something really totally broke down, it wouldn't be 100% out of pocket at this point. So that's good. We're making some headway. We've got a little bit of savings put aside in terms of when this laptop finally goes or this microphone finally goes. we might not have to go completely crazy trying to scratch things together. And, one of these days it wouldn't be bad if we were able to raise the professionalism level around here, too. That would probably mean replacing me, but what can you do? Onward and upward. Anyway, plenty of stories to round up out of pocket today as well. And let's go there. Since, where the hell else are we going to go? This is it, folks. This is the radio show. If I can't come up with it, I don't know what we're going to do. All right, let's see. I have put aside, and perhaps we'll read through them a little bit later. Maybe we can talk. I have a question for Greg about this one. 2 pieces over at, what do you call it? Daily Kos. You know that place. That made the recommended diaries list yesterday that caught my eye. One, City Ducks piece, A Bit of Hope. Right-wing Breitbart reporter learns life lessons while locked up with BLM protesters. I like the idea of a Breitbart reporter locked up, but I guess it didn't last very long. And there is a bit of a caveat in this one. City Duck begins by saying, I strongly encourage everyone here to do the unthinkable and rush over to the Breitbart site to read the article, My Weekend Incarceration in a Baton Rouge Prison. It is by Lee Stranahan. Lee is a guy. Interesting, maybe, is a word you might. This is a guy who I can't really recall. This is what I wanted to ask Greg. Does he remember the actual history? Stranahan considered himself a liberal progressive activist at some point. And he got disaffected over something. I don't know whether it was Pumaism, which would be amazingly ironic if that was it. But something split him off and really set him at odds with the progressive community. And the Breitbart community, I guess, said, look, someone who's unreasonably mad with the progressive community, let's take him in under our wing, hire him, give him money, and turn him into a conservative activist. And I guess for the past couple of years, that's what's happened. And now he's at odds with the Breitbart community again. Stable guy. I don't know. That's my guess. Anyway, Greg, good morning. How you doing?
Hey, good morning. A little bit of internet connection issues,
yeah?
So I hopefully don't fade while we talk, but otherwise doing well.
Okay. Do you remember Lee Stranahan?
Yeah.
It was a joke for a while, and then it became reality. I couldn't remember exactly, who he was or what he did. Just that it was like, that was one of those really sort of unstable dudes that was all over the map on everything. But do you remember what set him off to make him split off from the progressive community originally?
No.
Me neither. Okay. I was trying to see if I could find out early this morning, and I my best guess was Pumaism, but I'm not certain that was it.
It was a while ago, and I think it was part of a meltdown.
Yeah.
But, he's been hired and fired so many times, I really have lost track.
Yeah, as it happens, I was just reading, he went over to Breitbart, which, that was the thing. He was so alienated from progressivism that people anathema to progressivism said, we'll pay you to be anathema to progressivism. So he did it, and he ended up in jail with the BLM protesters in Baton Rouge, and I had some kind of, what would, I guess for another person, be an epiphany, but instead this is just I think, maybe another psychotic episode. So he's maybe switching sides again. I don't know. Don't stand too close. That's all. I will read a little bit about what he learned, which I'm sure, he learned it because it's probably a core truth. Regardless, you're going to learn these things in jail with activists. They'll teach you pretty good.
Right.
Anyway.
So we had our 3 big political events
Yes.
yesterday. We talked about it on the show. In the morning was the endorsement from Bernie. And on the pundit roundup this morning, I had some of the best of pieces that were covering that.
All right.
But I think that it would be irresponsible for us not to talk about the fart-in.
I guess it would now.
You know about it, right?
No. How could I miss such a thing?
Oh, man.
Oh, was I distracted?
So this is a piece from U.S. News. Bernie fans say the fart-in against Hillary will go on. despite the endorsement. Unswayed by his
Okay.
endorsement, progressives continue to stockpile beans for the Democratic convention.
This
Now,
doesn't
everybody
sound-
has to go look at Blazing Saddles and watch that scene, and then come back and we'll talk about this.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
this is a real thing. Advocates for poor people and
isn't.
progressive caucuses say they still plan to make a stink, literally, during Hillary Clinton's big night accepting the Democratic presidential nomination this month. The plan? Feed beans to Democratic National Convention delegates for Bernie Sanders and send them into the Philadelphia Convention Hall to show what they think of the former Secretary of State.
Well,
Now, the thing
at
is,
least it's
I
grown
don't
up.
want this to be out of context. I'll add the context in a moment.
right.
In fact, Sherry Honkala, National Coordinator for the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign, expects more beans to pour into her group's downtown Philly office. Boxes of dry beans in heavy containers of canned beans already have arrived by mail in all varieties, Navy, Pinto, Lima, and baked, with return addresses in Texas, Wisconsin, and across the Rust Belt.
Huh.
All
You
right,
gotta start
so they're
soaking those
organized.
dry beans. Starting now.
Organizers have not tested varieties to discern the smelliest option, but Honkala says baked beans likely will be preferred and paired with hot dogs at a feeding location
That's
in
a
a
good one.
Clintonville camp in northern Philly.
Hi. Okay.
Okay, do you know why they're doing this?
They're
I
9.
neither. Okay,
Okay.
and I'll give you one 2-word answer that would explain everything. Ready?
I think
Saul Alinsky.
so. Really?
Saul Alinsky's, this is from the Stone Street Press. It's an old piece, and this is actually quoting from Playboy magazine in 1972.
Oh, yeah,
it's entitled
sure.
Saul Alinsky's Flatulent Blitzkrieg, his own account of his famous fart-in, taking on Eastman Kodak in Rochester and winning.
Well, there was no smell-o-vision. Eastman Kodak was ripe for the taking at that point. Okay.
So he got to Rochester, was trying to organize a black community. Eastman Kodak was a little bit of a paternalistic company there at the time. And he writes, another idea I had that almost came to fruition was directed at the Rochester Philharmonic, which was the establishment's and Kodak's cultural jewel. I suggested we pick a night when the music would be relatively quiet and buy 100 seats. The 100 blacks scheduled to attend the concert would then be treated to a pre-show banquet in the community consisting of nothing but huge portions of baked beans. Can you imagine the inevitable consequences? Within the Symphony Hall, the concert would be over before the first movement, another Freudian slip there, and Rochester would be immortalized as the site of the world's first fart-in. Playboy said to him, aren't such tactics a bit juvenile and frivolous? And Alinsky said, I'd call them absurd, not frivolous. Or juvenile. But isn't much of life kind of theater of the absurd? As far as being frivolous is concerned, I say, if a tactic works, it's not frivolous. Let's take a closer look at this particular tactic and see what purposes it serves apart from being fun. First of all, the fart-in would be completely outside the City Fathers' experience. Demonstrations, confrontations, and picketings they've learned to cope with, but never in their wildest dreams could they envision a flatulent blitzkrieg on their sacred symphony orchestra. It would throw them into complete disarray. Second, the action would make a mockery of the law because although you could be arrested for throwing a stink bomb, there's no law on the books against natural bodily functions. Can you imagine a guy being tried in court on charges of first-degree farting? The cops would be paralyzed. Third, when the news got around, everybody who heard it would break out laughing, and the Rochester Philharmonic and the establishment it represents would be rendered totally ridiculous. Fourth benefit of the tactic is that it's psychically as well as physically satisfying to the participants. What oppressed person doesn't want literally or figuratively to crap on his oppressors? Here was the closest chance they'd have. Such tactics aren't cute. They can be useful in driving your opponent up the wall. Very often the most ridiculous tactic can prove the most effective. In any case, Playboy said, you never held your fart, and it's what finally broke Kodak's resistance. Alinsky's simple self-interest, the knowledge that the price of continuing to fight us was greater than reaching a compromise. It was one of the longest and toughest battles I've ever been in. After endless months of frustration, we finally decided we'd try to embarrass Kodak outside its fortress of Rochester and disrupt the annual stockholders convention in Flemington, New Jersey. Ooh, Flemington, New Jersey. You know that. Though we didn't know it at the time. All we had in mind was a little troublemaking. This was the seed from which a vitally important tactic was to spring. I addressed the Grand General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association, asked them for their proxies on whatever Kodak stock they held in order to gain entry to the stockholders' meeting. The Unitarians voted to use the proxies for their entire Kodak stock to support their organization. 5620 shares valued at over $700,000. The wire services carried the story. News of the incident spread across the country. Individuals began sending in their proxies. Other church groups indicated they were prepared to follow the Unitarians' lead. By purest accident, we'd stumbled onto a tactical gold mine. Remember, this was all started by the farting that didn't happen. So he goes and talks about how other things he did in that particular battle took place. I'm simply saying that the idea of a fart-in isn't new. This goes back 50 years.
Well, it could have stayed
That's
there.
The context. And you probably didn't know that. I didn't know that.
I didn't. But, and that's an important point, too, because,
that's why
of
we
course,
listen to Kagro in the morning, to learn these things.
And conservatives ought to tune in today to find out that today's progressives really don't know all that much about Saul Alinsky, after all, and what he did. They are positive that we live our lives by his writings, by the way.
Right, and they would be shocked to find out that we don't actually know them all. Now, I don't particularly think it's a smart thing to do. I don't think it'll be an effective thing to do. Personally, I think they should eat Rules for Radicals, Saul Alinsky's book, instead of beans. There's more fiber. But, it is what it is.
It might be what it is. We don't even know if it will be at this point. And, I mean,
politics ain't beanbag, but sometimes it does involve beans.
That's right. Boil the beanbags and eat them. Now that's politics.
Yeah, it's practical politics.
That is
incrementalism.
That's right, because it didn't take place yet. It was the threat of the far.
Well, not only that, the way it works is you got to build. You can't just go in there and do it.
Right.
You got to plan. You got to.
Although that was
his,
I do question.
And then it builds up.
Look at that plan he's got, and it's a little bit of underpants gnome-ish there. Yeah, well, fart. Question mark, question mark, question mark, establishment collapses.
Right, and all your listeners really shouldn't get the wrong idea. When we say fart, we are actually having a serious political discussion about radical tactics.
All right, yeah. Sure, right, okay. Well, I'm gonna do the little armpit thing probably for the rest of the show.
Probably, which is cute when little kids do it. Yes. Not so cute when grown-ups do it, I have to say.
Yeah, well, all right, I'll skip it. I'm not sure what my goals are.
Yeah, well, you have kids, assign them.
Right.
They'll enjoy it, we'll enjoy it, and everybody wins. So anyway, there's that background to everything. A little bit more serious. This is a really interesting piece here by a fella named C.D. Hooks, Christopher Hooks from Texas.
Yes.
Who I like to follow. I think he's really good. And it's in Rolling Stone.
It is.
And it's called Texas Gun Culture and Politics Made Dallas Shooting Inevitable.
It is called that.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Do you know the piece?
I have it at the ready from your note yesterday.
Dallas shooting was a powerful rebuke to the strange logic governing guns in the state.
Yes.
And he just goes through a little bit of history of how Dallas stuff happens often enough so that it's not totally shocking that you have open carry people walking around in the middle of somebody starting to shoot. And, of course, luckily, they all ran away.
Yes.
Because had they actually just started shooting with their open carry guns, it would have been a whole lot worse.
Yeah. Well, open carry, a relatively new thing in Texas, really. The actual gun tradition of Texas is that, it's been 100 and something years since they said, this is a terrible idea. No, you can't open carry guns. But just recently they decided it would be awesome. But long guns was something you could always carry because, I don't know. I think because people needed shotguns to shoot snakes at some point. Anyway, we seem to have lost the connection there, so that's not good, right at the start of the piece. But anyway, that's our little backgrounder on the recent political activity to try to win open carry rights in Texas. It was okay to carry long guns and not okay to carry handguns, which I guess made sense back when they did it, like I said, shotguns on a saddle to shoot snakes or something. And then the theory was, well, you can't sneak into any place carrying a long gun as opposed to a concealed or even a unconcealed, openly carried handgun. Just that much more transportable and far less reason for an openly carried handgun at the time. But then people agitated for it in a way that ended up making a certain amount of sense for allowing them to carry their handguns. That is by protesting. This was Open Carry Texas, and their interest in protesting by showing up at your local Target, Walmart, Chipotle, what have you, with the long guns that they were permitted to carry, and then saying, isn't it ridiculous that we can't carry smaller ones? And it appears to have worked. Speaking of things that worked, welcome back, Greg.
Hi, I don't know if you heard any of that.
I didn't, but you were just beginning the article.
Yeah.
So
it just
let's start that again.
Did you hear any about the vehicle that was involved here?
No.
A little over a year ago, a mentally ill Dallas area man named James Lance Bulware, angry over losing custody of his son, bought an armored van on eBay marketed as a zombie apocalypse assault vehicle. You have one of those, right? Everybody has one.
I have 3.
The van had gun ports under each of its blacked-out windows, and just after midnight one Saturday morning, with a few homemade pipe bombs and a semi-automatic rifle in hand, he drove the van to the headquarters of the Dallas Police Department and started firing. Many hours later, the cops, with the aid of special weaponry, disabled the van and killed Bulwer, spending much of the day dealing with the explosive devices he left behind. So having the police attacked and using weird things like robot bombs is not new.
Right. They should try farts.
Yeah. One of the strangest things about the bizarre and brief reign of terror in Dallas is how little attention it warranted by that Monday. Having happened in the wee hours of the weekend, it fell into a news hole. Bulwer's failure to successfully shoot any of the police made it easier for people to shrug it off. Something about the situation, as surreal an event as you can imagine happening in an American city, had become normalized, unworthy of sustained general interest 2 days later.
Yuck.
Okay?
Yeah.
So we've all become accustomed to mass shootings, but Bulwer's specific anti-police plot wasn't even particularly unusual in Texas. 8 months earlier, an anti-government crank named Larry McQuillan went on a shooting spree in downtown Austin after firing 100 rounds into government buildings in the headquarters of the Austin Police Department in a botched attempt to set the Mexican consulate on fire. He was dispatched by one cop's lucky shot before he could hurt anybody. 2010, a loner named Patrick Sharp attempted to set off an ammonium nitrate bomb in front of the headquarters of the McKinney Police Department north of Dallas. The bomb failed to detonate, but he then fired 163 shots at responding officers before he was killed. All commentary to the contrary notwithstanding, there's nothing particularly surprising about Thursday's attack in Dallas. It was inevitable. Eventually, somebody was going to get it right.
Yes. Well, right in scare quotes or
right, and then everybody knows the big one here. The modern mass shooting was born 3 hours south of Dallas at the University of Texas in Austin in 1966. Another veteran, ex-Marine named Charles Whitman, climbed the university tower and started picking off students.
Yes.
Whitman, like Johnson, benefited from being a hell of a lot better with a gun than his opponents and had significant tactical advantages. In Whitman's case, height. In Johnson's case, chaos and the presence of crowds. So Texas has done some odd things, and they just have this gun culture there.
Yeah, they do. And as I was explaining while we were having the connection problems, they also have strangely, they have a real tradition of every once in a while being overtaken by common sense and saying no more with the guns. I mean, in their case, living through, I guess, Wild West days, and then saying, hey, we ought to have a rule where you can't wear your guns to town. Yeah, and that was old-timey, common sense sort of thing to do. And then when the gun craze took off again in recent years, we were still stuck with those rules on the books. Like, yeah, you can't put a 6-shooter on a belt and walk into the saloon and just shoot whoever you want. That was common sense then. But it's outdated now because, of course, these guns, they don't shoot if you drop them. And if you just keep your finger off the trigger and follow all the rules, they're inanimate objects and everybody will be safer and more polite. And here we are. 100 and something years later, back to open carry of sidearms.
Right. So he makes 2 points here, which is interesting. So-called open carry demonstrations have become a fairly routine part of civic life in Texas. People, mostly young men, materialize in public places with long guns over their shoulders, usually unloaded, to flex their rights again in scare quotes. Mostly they revel in the feeling of power and attention it gives them, but the presence of guns is never a value-neutral proposition. They're sometimes used to intimidate. On several occasions, open carry groups have showed up just outside the meeting places of gun control advocates, just to hang out.
Mm-hmm.
And when a Black Lives Matter group marched in Dallas in 2014, a small group of open carry guys showed up with rifles to chaperone them and then later told conservative outlets they had prevented a riot. So when shots rang out on Thursday, the Dallas PD, in the panic scramble to find the shooter, had more false positives to eliminate.
Yes.
There's one fellow, famously Mark Hughes, who was called a suspect on Twitter because he happened to be an open carry black man, was lucky to be alive after that, it says, and the presence of any visible weapons at the match clearly added to confusion in the shooting's aftermath. Open carry protesters often show up where many people are, at political conventions, rallies, festivals, Southwest, for example. Gun enthusiasts often talk about the dangers of gun-free zones, but Johnson, the perp here in the Dallas police killings last week, shows that for the smart mass shooter, civilians carrying guns can serve as decoys. But what about the ability of carried weapons when loaded to protect? Speaking of gun-free zones, Johnson, of course, could not have picked a more heavily armed part of Dallas to start shooting. There was a thick concentration of police officers already due to the march. Dallas police headquarters a few blocks away, and the officers hunting him down in the initial phase weren't civilian hobbyists. They were trained to do this. Many were vets like Johnson, and he was still spectacularly successful. So it's not like, everybody was protected. It's just a really interesting discussion about Texas and the normalization of this sort of thing. Just weird.
True. It is pretty weird. And I'm glad that finally people are getting around to analyzing this as a example of pretty much everything that gun safety advocates or gun control advocates said was going to happen. Wait, have a test case.
Just like yesterday, we talked about Jay Bookman and the Second Amendment solutions.
Right.
Not so much.
So far, they have not been right about almost any of their theories about how things would really go down. And,
it's kind of like pundits,
Eventually, we'll learn that it doesn't work very well in theaters too.
You're always wrong, but you keep saying it because why not?
Okay.
So you want to talk about Bernie? Or you want to talk about Trump?
Trump.
Segment here. Trump. Okay. Interesting story here in the New York Times.
Okay.
Which is, and then we'll do the Trump Bernie interface. But the story in the Times is by Nick Confessor, and it's called "For Whites Sensing Decline, Donald Trump Unleashes Words of Resistance."
Yes, okay.
And it's another one of these who are the Trump people, but it's fairly amazing when you just collect it all. It's always, people have done this, but when you collect it all in one place, you scratch your head and say, really? In countless collisions of color and creed, Donald Trump's name evokes an easily understood message of racial hostility, writes the New York Times in their news section. Defying modern conventions of political civility and language, Trump has breached the boundaries that have long constrained Americans' public discussion of race. He's attacked Mexicans as criminals. He's called for a ban on Muslim immigrants. He's wandered aloud why the United States is not letting people in from Europe. Of course, Mark Halpern would say that's all not allowed because those aren't races. Therefore, it can't be racism. His rallies vibrate with grievances that might otherwise be expressed in private about political correctness, ranch house down the street overcrowded with day laborers, who's really to blame for the death of a black teenager in Ferguson. In a country where the wealthiest and most influential citizens are still mostly white, Mr. Trump is voicing the bewilderment and anger of whites who do not feel at all powerful or privileged. But in doing so, he's also opened the door to assertions of white identity and resentment in a way not seen so broadly in American culture in over half a century, according to those who track patterns of racial tension and antagonism in American life. So to compare him to George Wallace is not inappropriate. To point out that David Duke is now considering running for Congress because, the time is right is not inappropriate to point out. It's scary.
Yes.
And so that's why I have so little patience with people who say, well, this is all a distraction from our real issues.
Oh? What would our real issues even be?
Oh, capitalism and
Goldman
Sachs and all that sort of stuff.
Those capitalist guys, okay.
I got one on that too. I'll get to, but anyway, so it's pretty striking. Yes. And of course, what happened yesterday is that Bernie endorsed Hillary, and who gets on Twitter and complains about it? Donald Trump. Real tweets. Bernie Sanders has abandoned his supporters by endorsing pro-war, pro-TPP, pro-Wall Street crooked Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump, to all the Bernie voters who want to stop bad trade deals and global special interests, we welcome you with open arms. People first. Bernie tweets back, big talk from the same guy who was too afraid to debate Bernie in California.
Huh.
So he's doing his best to
how
try to exploit things. He did it in his talk last night. Remember, there were 3 events. There was the morning Bernie Hillary thing. There was the very somber memorial with Obama and George W. Bush giving pretty good speeches. And then there was the evening Donald Trump show. And, of course, he's back to being unscripted when he is talking to his constituents at rallies. He's only scripted when he gives a teleprompter speech at the behest of the party elders who want to rein him in. That really is only for during the day. At night, he does his regular rallies, and he goes back to being Donald Trump, so nothing really changes there. But it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I saw remarked. That's how remarkable it is. I saw remarks made about it. He was spent the night on Twitter again. Even I think tweeting at 1 a.m. about his displeasure with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who had criticized him. And so the best comment I saw on it really was Donald Trump, who's doing the exhausting job of running for president of the United States, is awake and tweeting at 1 a.m. because he's totally not abusing any substances. Just putting that out there. I'm not saying he's doing it. I'm saying it ought to be looked into.
Right.
Did you? And in the last segment, did you mention David Duke's name?
I did.
In
yeah.
passing?
Because he's decided that the time is right for him to run.
Right. Did you see who he's running against?
No.
He's running against Scalise. Stephen Scalise, which is hilarious because we now have
That's incredible.
David Duke without the baggage.
We got the fake KKK guy running against the real KKK
yeah,
guy.
the David Duke without the baggage
KKK
being challenged by David Duke.
KKK heavy.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's like, I don't know how you even, what's the best bumper sticker to come out of that one? So he's challenging him, saying basically what his constituents want if they elect him is they want the baggage back.
Right.
They need the robes. This is giving them an opportunity in the primary to decide between David Duke with robes, David Duke without robes.
Yeah, incredible. Charles P. Pierce, I think, has one of the best pieces on Bernie. Bernie Sanders, long goodbye. He left his mark on the party. He won't let you forget that. He actually had a half hour's worth of endorsing Hillary, of which about 45% or 50% or maybe 75% were really about him and his campaign, and that's fine.
That's the way it goes.
It's perfectly appropriate, and Hillary was fine with it. And Bernie kept saying he's going to talk about the future, and instead he just wound up talking about the past, and that's fine. And the interesting thing is, if you've heard Bernie a lot, you heard his stump speech. If you like his stump speech, that was great. If not, maybe not. But I'll tell you, the best thing about it is when he was done, and he gave Hillary a hug, and he had this huge, big smile on his face. Mm-hmm. And I wrote on Daily Kos at the time, that smile was worth the whole speech. I mean, it was just a really, really good scene and very nice to see. Some of his supporters have already come over to Hillary, and they found it fine. And Hillary supporters found it fine. There are a few Bernie holdouts who did not react so well to it. I just found it odd. I guess those are the fart-in peoples, because they reacted as if they were shocked that such a thing would happen.
Yes.
And you really have to not be paying attention to what's been going on the past month to be shocked. I think you don't like it. That's easy. But how could you be shocked by it?
Yeah. No, I'm shocked. I'm willing to pretend.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, but he had some very good lines about that, and he also adds, and it says more than a little about HRC, that she allowed Sanders to take this extended victory lap in his speech prior to endorsing her formally. She and her campaign allowed a vigorous debate to take place over the platform. It was both personally classy and politically shrewd, especially since she had to know that the various phrenologists and seers in the campaign press corps were going to divine every blink of an eye on the podium for some hidden conflict or deeper meaning. She was also very gracious in her remarks toward her supporters, some of whom walked out in protest before she even began.
Didn't even fart.
Nope. Well, it was, I guess, outdoors, so it wouldn't have done, well, no, it was indoors. It was at a Portsmouth, New Hampshire gym. So, could have been done, but wasn't done.
Yeah, it's they're not organized on the ground. I mean, honestly, this stuff takes years to develop, these relationships between beans and flatulence, and it's not something you can just come up with on the fly.
Right. There was voter suppression and vote rigging. They're still counting votes in California, said Mara O'Rourke, a Sanders supporter who came all the way from Long Island to walk out before HRC began to speak. And I read that, and I laughed, too. I said, you came all the way there so you could walk out before.
You could have walked anywhere.
Yeah, you could have just not come.
I just want to talk about the carbon footprint that it took to do that stunt.
And all due respect, but the mainstream press has blacked it out, she said. The votes in California and all the other stuff.
Yeah.
So they interviewed a couple of Sanders irreconcilables, wrestling with the reality that the candidate had decided to do what he'd come to Portsmouth to do.
He went all the way there and then did it.
There are people who are just, that's what I mean about how can you be shocked? I get that you didn't like it, but how could you be shocked? So he's formally out of the race. He lost his Secret Service protection. And it was interesting. I saw Nina Turner, Sanders' surrogate, on cable yesterday.
Okay.
And trying to not be pinned down.
Yeah.
About whether she would endorse Clinton. And every time she was asked, what are you going to do now? She says, it's not about me. It's about the movement. But are you going to endorse Hillary? Bernie has. Well, it's not about me. Well, okay, but what are you going to do? Well, it's not about me. The movement has to go on.
Yeah, okay.
It's a particularly frustrating dialogue.
Oh, your pants are on fire. I know, but it's not about me.
Because in November, I actually have to vote.
Right.
And the other guy's a racist.
Yes.
And so what are you saying?
Yeah.
Well, it's bigger than me. It's bigger than them. It's bigger than the White House. It's a movement. Okay.
So I'm not on the record saying I'm voting for her, but I'm voting for her.
I'm an older person.
Yeah.
You know? And I go back to if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem decade. And so if you're not working against Trump, what are you doing?
I am absolutely working against Trump. I'm just not saying how.
Who are you voting for?
It's not about me.
It's not about me. Right, exactly. That's what I find so frustrating.
That's what I'm going to write on the ballot. It's not about me.
It's not about me.
Okay, one vote for not you, I guess. I got
that.
Check.
It's a lot of it is in that Bernie Sanders Long Goodbye article by Charles Peace, very much recommended. And let's see what we have here. We also have this from JW. Well, we talked a little bit about that New York Times piece about the racism with Trump, but this is about the GOP platform. J.W. Peters in the New York Times on the hard right, Jeremy Peters on the hard right GOP platform. Republicans moved on Tuesday to adopt a staunchly conservative platform that takes a strict traditionalist view of the family and child rearing, bars military women from combat, describes coal as clean energy source, declares pornography a public health crisis, and I think supports gay conversion therapy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I believe so.
So that's also pretty weird.
Yeah, for a number of reasons, and really just does not belong in a platform. It doesn't belong on Earth, but much less on the platform.
Right. And then this final piece here, after talking a little bit about the Sanders movement, this is an open letter on identity politics to and from the left. It's written in Medium, and I just thought it was rather interesting. And it talks about the fact that when people try to talk in the left movement about problems within the left movement, they were also often marginalized. Okay. We ask you to consider a few incidents, the authors say. In 1968, the leftist Shuli Firestone, gives a speech at a conference. She is giving voice to one side of a debate that has arisen within radical youth movements. On the one side, many radicals argue that capitalism is the only true enemy and the only cause of oppression. On the other, equally radical women note that capitalism alone is not a sufficient explanation for why they're excluded from leadership positions in their own groups or why they're treated in exploitative and abusive ways by male radicals. We women often have to wonder if men mean what you say about revolution or whether you just want more power for yourselves. This time we aren't going to wait for your revolutionary clarity. We've learned better. The reaction to her speech, people recall, was like a riot was breaking out. Men began chanting, "Take it off, take her off the stage, and screw her," to drown Firestone out. An organizer panicked, tells Firestone's co-presenter to shut Shuli up and tries to get both women off the stage. And Ellen Willis asks, if radical men can so easily be provoked into acting like rednecks, what can we expect from others?
Yes.
Willis' sympathetic reporting on the incident receives angry letters to the editor informing Willis that the enemy is not man, it's capitalism. And so it continues. And then they give examples, 1973, with queer activists being shouted down. Sylvia Rivera, who actually one of the women who famously started the Stonewall riots, but was talking at looks like a gay convention, and these women, Rivera says, are beaten, raped, and denied necessary medical attention, talking about transgender women in prison. They can't write to feminist organizations for help. Cis feminists revile them. These women can only write to her and to her organization. And as Sylvia takes the stage, the crowd makes it very clear why that is. Shut up, a woman shrieks over and over again. Only a little bit expletives that I can't say on the radio added to that. Gape and bellow and boo at the stage. The noise is impossible. Before long, Rivera's shrieking too, screaming in an effort to be heard over the crowd. I will not put up with this crap. I've been beaten. I've had my nose broken. I've lost my job. I've lost my apartment for gay liberation, and you treat me this way. What is wrong with you all? And there she stands, one of the women who started the GBLT rights movement in America, pleading, screaming just to be heard, just to have her life and the lives of women like her acknowledged by cisgender gay men and lesbians. Shut up, the crowd continues to holler, and so it continues. And they give other examples. 2015, to bring us a little bit more up to date, two young women of color, Marissa Johnson and Mara Williford, occupy the stage in an event for presidential candidate Bernie Sanders. They speak for Black Lives Matter, a radical group aimed at exposing and resisting the murder of people of color by the police. Tomorrow is the one-year anniversary of the ruthless murder of Michael Brown, Johnson says. It's time we honor that here and now. We've already done it, a woman shouts from the crowd. How dare you, a man bellows. The boos cascade over the stage by the end of the speech. The young women appear visibly shaken. They are subsequently accused of working for Goldman Sachs, a powerful financial institution, and directly working for one of Sanders' opponents, Hillary Clinton. Yes. Gawker publishes a response to the incident by a white male writer, Hamilton Nolan. The article, entitled "Don't Piss on Your Best Friend," sums up the woman's actions as follows. It's stupid, don't do it. Nolan goes on at length to basically mansplain to them why they're wrong, and white-splain to them why they're wrong, I suppose. And the enemy, in other words, is not whiteness, but capitalism, and so it continues. And they just give example after example after example. And simply make the point, several points. They call upon progressives to acknowledge that all politics are identity politics. And with those examples, we call upon our fellow progressives to recognize abuse is not dissent. In other words, try not shutting them up, but listening to them. And 3, we call upon each and every one of our fellow progressives to clean up their own house, and gives plenty of examples of sexism or sexual abuse or things of that sort. And they point out identity politics isn't free of those patterns, but it's all part of a bigger piece. And they end with, we're the left. We're not attacking our movements by speaking about these problems. We're not harming them. We're not dividing them. We're making our movements possible, because when you target us, harass us, diminish us, oppress us, you lose us. You lose the coalition you need to organize. You lose the credibility you need to persuade. You lose the people who could have or would have helped you. And when you spend all your ammunition on taking us down, you will eventually realize the real problem. When it's time for the revolution, you will have driven out so many of your fellow progressives that you find yourself charging up the hill alone. And then lots of signatures at the bottom. Long list of signatures. So, some really great points here. The intersectionality of justice, whether it's social justice, economic justice, or legal justice and reform, all come to the same place. You can't just do it from it's all about Goldman Sachs. You can't. When you do that, you lose your allies. We saw that. And that's one of the reasons why one of the candidates didn't win. So you got to be careful with it.
It's a delicate
wrong,
thing.
But you got to be careful with it.
By the same token, I would say it can be misapplied in a number of ways. For instance, I have no doubt that Lee Stranahan thought that's exactly what's happening to me when he was first alienated from the progressive movement.
I suppose.
I'm sure he thought so. And they're the ones who have lost their minds. And eventually history will vindicate me. They will all come around to my position on this, that, or the other thing, as opposed to me being jailed with Black Lives Matter protesters and coming back. But
to be fair, the winners always write the history.
Yeah, well, that's true. And so this happens all the time, everywhere. Anytime, I guess, that there's some sort of split among allies, one or both groups probably are certain that this is happening to them, and they may even both be right, and the only one that gets written up as right is the one that prevails in the end. because they get to write the history, and it could just as easily have been said of the other group, but they lost.
Well,
So,
I'm just saying that politics in general is the art of persuasion, and proving your righteousness generally gets you less votes than persuading people to go along with you.
And another of the
which
points
not just for the left, it's also for Donald Trump. One of the things that has been pointed out about him is that he plays real well with his hardcore grievance base, but he's completely abandoned any attempt, even the pretense of persuasion. He's not trying to persuade anybody. You're either with him or you're completely and totally against him. That's fine with him, and that's what he's doing. Which, by the way, again, is why he's going to lose.
Yeah, and he's okay with it. So he's uniquely positioned to pull that stunt, because I don't think he cares one way or the other whether he wins or loses. But yeah, the only other point I was going to make is another thing that you've told us a lot: the importance of winning. Is you do get to write that history. You want to be the one that determines which of the two sides that both claim to have been victimized by, I don't know what you would call it. I would hang a label on this thing, but these splits where social justice allies become outcasts because competing interests force a split. But that's the importance of the pragmatic importance of winning. Is eventually you get to write the rules. That's the point of winning in politics, is you make the policy. The policy is which of these two sides was asserting this grievance correctly. And the mechanism you use to make that decision is writing the history and persuading people that that's a correct history and moving on.
Right, exactly. So with that, I think we'll wrap it up. And
okay,
it's Wednesday. Is Joan going to join you today? Do you know?
That is what I heard. I believe she's
very
eating
cool.
beans
Say hi.
at the moment, so she's getting ready.
Cool. So with that, again, yesterday was really a time for unity. Obama did a fantastic job of covering all the points. He's unfortunately quite good at these memorial services, but really acknowledged the black males who had been shot, while acknowledging the police in Dallas who had been shot. And of course, everybody is very impressed with the Dallas chief there, Chief Brown, and just wonderful, wonderful things that people said in a horrible situation where nobody should really have to say them. And I think of the three events, that's the one that really dominated the news yesterday, as it should. But the others were of political importance. And of course, we have new Quinnipiac polls out this morning that nobody's paying attention to because they're wacky. They have an 11-point swing in Florida toward Trump, which is ridiculous. It comes out at the same time as the new Reuters Ipsos poll comes out with an 11-point lead for Clinton. And you can't have a huge double-digit lead nationally and have an 11-point swing in Florida. Steve Schale, again, the Florida political operative who won Florida for Obama and knows the state like the back of his hand, did one of these Simpsons GIFs that he posted. So whenever a Quinnipiac poll comes out, I do this. And it's just Lisa hitting herself on the head over and over and over again with a basketball. And that's about right. I mean, just don't pay attention to Quinnipiac polls. Just don't.
Yes.
They're not accurate. They don't reflect exactly what's going on there. Just move on.
It is, after all, the home of Florida man.
Yeah, don't waste your time analyzing them. Don't waste your time looking at the crosstabs and trying to figure out how come there aren't any Latinos in Florida anymore. Forget it. Just move on and look at other polls. Okay,
good old Quinnipiac.
Even the Republican pollsters were saying, sigh, just look at the aggregates.
Okay, well, we can do that. And we do every day.
And we do. All right, take care, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right, fart at you later.
It doesn't have the same kind of effect on the radio, I should point out.
No? Well,
not as much as it would, let's say, in a concert hall.
Well, all the comedy is there, but none of the
I'm going back to watch Blazing Saddles. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Right. Okay, I'll grab that sound clip, and we'll put that on next time we have a guest. Thanks, Greg. Should I do that? I'll spare Joan, although if she's listening along, it will no longer come as a surprise anyway. So a lot of the element of surprise is gone there. So maybe we'll forego the opportunity. That will be interesting if they actually pull that one off. Maybe they're planning, like Alinsky, simply to threaten it and maybe even have a good time hanging out at the Bean Festival, we'll call it. That's fine as a social activity. And then not do, I mean, for one thing, it won't work very well according to the Alinsky plan. I mean, such as it was, the idea was, well, we'll pick a night. Why am I analyzing this? Pick a night where it's quiet music, and then everyone will hear what's going on. Whereas, I got to tell you, the idea of trying to pull off anything in, much less a fart in, from the floor of the Democratic National Convention. I mean, unless you're going to mic yourself somehow, and that's an enormously expensive proposition. And honestly, you're not going to be able to hear a goddamn thing. At best, you're going to have people next to these guys going, "What is the matter with you?" And then that's it. I mean, I don't know. Like, how will the cameras in? This is a dumb idea. I'm glad. Thank God you listened to the show long enough for me to finally get across to you that farting on the floor of the Democratic National Convention is not going to be a particularly effective tactic. So, okay, so they're getting their press. That's what it's supposed to be about. I hope, cross my fingers, so that they're at least, believe. I don't even know what to say. Are they still allies? I don't know. Anyway, it's not going to work. I mean, I wonder whether there's an organizing meeting like, and it'll smell so bad, she'll resign, or she'll concede the nomination to Bernie Sanders. By the way, I did see somebody tweet this morning that it's still on. Bernie didn't concede the nomination at any point. And as you know, today is only July 13th. That makes it another, 12 days until the superdelegates vote. So you don't know what's going to happen. Not to mention the fact that the superdelegates, may have gas that day. And who knows how that will affect their votes. I don't even know what to say, but I guess that goes also alongside the other thing I saw tweeted yesterday and didn't put aside anywhere. Wasn't that important, but I guess who did it? Was the Times was doing sort of one of the Facebook Live things where you stream video. I know about streaming audio, but I guess that's what everybody's doing. All the kids these days: Huffington Post, New York Times, Facebook. YouTube allows you to do this thing too live. I got to decide one of these days whether we're going to add a video element to the show. It doesn't make any sense because I don't have a set, and also very often I am not fully shaven, and it would be ridiculous. You're not going to want to see what's going on here in my kitchen. So unless I can put together some kind of virtual reality thing, it won't have a very strong visual element. Anyway, the New York Times put one together with Bernie Sanders supporters, I guess, reacting to the endorsement speech. And let's see, who was it that made the comment? I can't even remember. But they were saying, geez, could you have put together a more cartoonish panel for this? They had, three very hipster millennial people, two women and one man who just, it was like, I don't even know. Like I said, it was cartoonish. I didn't even say it. Cartoonish, though, the group that they put together. And between this and the fart in, I guess it's not really making the Bernie Sanders movement look all that smart. But thankfully, I think we know well enough. I guess we're probably up in the range of 99% now of Bernie fans probably say exactly the same thing about that. One, this panel looks ridiculous. Two, farting, I don't know. Here it is in the Hill, though. They really do have Sanders delegates to hold anti-Clinton fart in at the convention. Mad Hatter tweets to me. You can follow along with Mad Hatter at Elrond50, ELROND 50. Think about how big the Wells Fargo Center is. Idea of farting is stupid. Well, the idea is farting of stupid is if it's a broom closet, but it's also stupid in something that size and just the acoustic dynamics of the place are. Even if you manage to get onto the floor with bullhorns, you're not going to be heard. It's not going to work. It doesn't work inside acoustically. It certainly doesn't work for television. They can pick and choose exactly what audio they pick up. And it's not going to be the farts. Although That would be fun if you could mic somebody. I wonder what does the Hill, is that different? I can't remember what Greg's source on this was. Is there any news in this one, or is it just the fact that the Hill is picking up on it now? By the way, they have a picture of the gigantic balloons that get dropped on the crowd. Now, that would be something. If you could fill those with flatulence and then drop them on the crowd and they begin to burst one at a time, or the Bernie activists were on the floor with pins. Now, that would be something. You wouldn't hear the noise, but you would begin to hear the groans, I suppose. I really can't spend any more time helping these guys strategize this thing. But I can't believe I missed it, and it's certainly good fodder for a morning radio show. There's no doubt. Okay, so Greg's source there was the U.S. News. The Hill was merely citing the U.S. News report. I don't think they're going to have anything extra on that one. I don't know how much more research time we can spend on it. All right, so where were we? Before we were so rude, and I mean so rudely interrupted. There's no ruder way to interrupt. Let's see. By way of background on some of the other things we mentioned this morning, CNN's report on Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's comments. What were they, after all? I don't know. So here's the answer. Ruth Bader Ginsburg's well-known candor was on display in her chambers late Monday when she declined to retreat from her earlier criticism of Donald Trump and even elaborated on it. He is a faker, she said of the presumptive Republican presidential nominee, going point by point as if presenting a legal brief. What? So weird for a justice. He has no consistency about him. He says whatever comes into his head at the moment. He really has an ego. How has he gotten away with not turning over his tax returns? The press seems to be very gentle with him on that. Horrors. Ginsburg's comments came in a previously scheduled interview related to my research for a book. Whose research for a book? That would be Joan Biskupich, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, CNN legal analyst and Supreme Court biographer, who is speaking here about her book. She took a detour, she did, our interviewer, to raise the reverberations from her criticism of Trump to the Associated Press and the New York Times in recent interviews. I can't imagine what this place would be. I can't imagine what the country would be with Donald Trump as our president, she had said in the Times interview published Monday. And without more, how do you assail that? I can't imagine it. So what? Anyway, Trump responded Wednesday morning by calling on Ginsburg to resign. That'll happen, because lifetime appointment. Justice Ginsburg of the U.S. Supreme Court has embarrassed all by making very dumb political statements about me. Her mind is shot. Resign, Trump tweeted at 12:54 a.m. Early this morning. Go to bed, Don. It is highly unusual for a justice to make such politically charged remarks, but then again, it's highly unusual to have a justice go duck hunting with people who have cases pending before the court. And some critics had said she crossed the line. Who cares? My comment on all this, is it unusual? Was it uncalled for? Yes, but suck it. You're a loser. That's I'm just saying Tom Friedman here. Suck on this, Don. Sorry. That's rough and tumble politics today. Lifetime appointment. Eat it. What do you think about that? House Speaker Paul Ryan told CNN's Jake Tapper on Tuesday night the comments were, quote, out of place. So what? For someone on the Supreme Court who's going to be calling balls and strikes, that's not what she says she does. That's your boy, and he's lying. In the future, based upon what the next president in Congress does, that strikes me as inherently biased and out of the realm. Out of the realm of what? He doesn't say, because he doesn't know what the phrase out of the realm means. Having met with Ginsburg on a regular basis for more than a decade and sometimes been struck by her frankness, I found her response classic. The 83-year-old justice expressed no regret on Monday for the comments or surprise that she would be criticized. Any disbelief she expressed stemmed from the fact that Trump had gotten so far in the election cycle. At first, I thought it was funny, she said of Trump's early candidacy, to think that there's a possibility that he could be president. Her voice trailed off gloomily. In other words, Ruth Bader Ginsburg tells it like it is. She calls them as she sees them. She's saying the things we're all afraid to say out loud. She's anti-PC. Anyway, I think he's gotten so much free publicity, she added, drawing a contrast between what she believes is tougher media treatment of Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton and returning to an overriding complaint. Every other presidential candidate has turned over tax returns. Ginsburg was appointed to the High Court, in case you didn't know, by Bill Clinton in 1993 and is now the senior member of the liberal wing and a leading voice countering conservative Chief Justice Roberts. She has drawn a cult-like following among young people who have nicknamed her the Notorious RBG, a play on American rapper, the Notorious B.I.G., Biggie. So for those of you who are 800 years old, now we're caught up on that. Thank you. It's good Vox-like explainer. The rest of it is profile, which is important. I've witnessed her off-bench bluntness many times through the years. During 2009 oral arguments, which is not off-bench, in a case involving a 13-year-old Arizona girl who had been strip-searched by school administrators looking for drugs, probably for themselves, she was troubled that some male justices played down any harm to the student. They have never been a 13-year-old girl, Ginsburg told me. It's a very sensitive age for a girl. I didn't think that my colleagues, some of them, quite understood. Earlier in 2009, she was being treated for pancreatic cancer, yet made sure to attend President Barack Obama's televised speech to a joint session of Congress, explaining that she wanted people to know that the Supreme Court was not all men. I wanted them to see I was alive and well, contrary to that senator who'd said I'd be dead within 9 months. Totally appropriate thing to say. Of course, she was referring to Senator Jim Bunning, a Kentucky Republican, who had said she would likely die within 9 months from pancreatic cancer. Bunning later apologized and left Congress. It was evident in our interview on Monday that when Ginsburg imagines who would succeed Obama, she does not expect Trump to prevail over Clinton, acknowledging her own age, and that Justices Anthony Kennedy and Stephen Breyer will turn 80 and 78, respectively. Ginsburg said of the possible next president, she is bound to have a few appointments to the Supreme Court in her term. So there you have it. A little bit of background on what people are complaining about, the wording of Trump's complaint. And I guess everybody is getting the vapors over this one, and you oughtn't to do that. It's not really all that serious thing, and also who cares, and what are you going to do? Impeach her? I mean, it's up to you. You could try it. It's just not likely to work. All right. So let's see. Yes, Joan says she's about ready to go. She's had all the beans she can stomach, so let's welcome her in. Good morning, Joan. How you doing?
Good morning, Kagro. I am fine. How are you?
That's good. I am amused. We spent the good portion of the first hour discussing apparent or plans for the Democratic convention during Hillary Clinton's speech that Sanders delegates are apparently considering. Are you up to speed on this?
Luckily, it's a big arena, so hopefully,
right,
odors will dissipate. Quickly.
Right. I think so. One, of course, you'll never hear the noise, and two, I will also say that large scale conventions of perfectly respectable Americans, but they don't always, in the crowd, smell all that good to begin with, to be honest.
You get that many people. I mean, it takes hot. A lot of walking to
Summer,
get to the convention center.
It's a sweaty place, conventions, and it's not likely to work well. Also, once again, we're forced to acknowledge the mathematics of the situation. They will be in the minority.
They will be in the minority.
So this is a minority of the minority. And also, I mean, I guess there's some danger in these tactics that some of the participants, enthused as they may be, may not make it all the way to the floor. I'm just pointing that out. There are going to be some people with maybe celiac issues or something who are just going to say, my intentions were good. I really have to be home in the hotel room at this point.
Well, we've kind of seen, particularly under those circumstances.
And it's the last night of the convention. It's so tiring. You're exhausted, maybe even a little bit dehydrated. The conditions are not good. So, all right. That'll be good to see how that one comes off. If anybody is there at the convention and can later on report, I heard one, I don't know, call in or record it. Bring your smartphone.
We've got a staff member going. Peregrine Kate will be there. So she's been chosen as a delegate from Michigan.
Okay, and that's because she has no sense of smell.
So she can report back for us.
Great. Okay. I'm sure she's looking forward to that part. And what can I tell you? The movement is growing every day. This is the end of capitalism. I can feel it. I'm so close I can smell it.
Well, hey, it's creative.
It is interesting. And that's all.
Maybe personally uncomfortable, but that's the whole part of devoting yourself to change,
right?
And to creating change.
Yes.
You've got to be personally uncomfortable,
right? And some of these people will maybe even afterwards will say, "I have to go home and change right now." This is terrible. Well, it speaks well.
I wonder who among the 9 Supreme Court justices would be the farter in conference.
In conferences, yeah. Well, Clarence Thomas is usually pretty silent, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's out of the running.
Yeah.
That's true. And they are seated, so you can't even look for movement in the robe. I guess if anybody's robe inflates at the neck, you can pin it on that guy. I don't know.
I would have put my money on Scalia.
Yes.
Who probably would have, thought it was a great joke.
Oh, yeah. He would have had a huge grin for that one. I'm sure about that. So I don't know. I mean, is Alito going to try to step into those shoes? I don't really know. Well, it's one of those secrets.
I have been listening to your show, and I thought, you were putting out some Armando bait there. But apparently he didn't take it.
Yeah, I guess not. He's preparing. Has he written his piece? I know he's been threatening now to write up something that's been a long time theme of his. Well, everywhere, but on the show as well. That the shock, the feigned shock, really, of a politicized Supreme Court. Time to get over it. It's been a political body for a long time, and these weren't even particularly outrageous political comments either. What Ruth Bader Ginsburg had to say, and it's just people who are conservatives hate Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and they're going to make a big deal out of anything she says.
Well, and the Dan Dresners of the world, the supposed thoughtful moderates. He was on his fainting couch over it yesterday, right. Which I don't know if he's ever written about Justice Thomas and his wife's activities with the Tea Party. Mm-hmm. And, the various times that these guys have spoken before. What group was it? The Constitutional... Oh,
the Federalist Society?
Yes, the Federalist Society.
Yeah, right.
So...
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know what to say. This is an extraordinarily mild commentary at that.
I thought so.
Anyway.
I thought so.
Yeah. I guess really what it came down to for me last night and thinking about it was I'm just thinking about how learned and brilliant she really is, and then the people who were criticizing her, even the thoughtful moderates. It's like, well, you've made a career for yourself, but how close are you to the Supreme Court bench, buddy? Nowhere. I mean, you're not even in the same ballpark. Your job is watching what they do and reacting. And there's a reason for that. You haven't had the accomplishments. You haven't driven toward. I mean, clearly you had no interest in serving on the bench at any point, and maybe you could have made it as a district court judge somewhere. But I don't know. So and certainly Donald Trump, forget about it. Probably his sister tweeted to him, shut up already.
I hope so. It would be nice to think somebody had some kind of control over Donald Trump's mouth, but I wouldn't bet on it.
Yes, it would be nice to know. All right, so let's see. So what else is going on besides laughing at the fart in? I mean,
well, we're laughing at Paul Ryan.
Okay, it's a little bit like that.
Laughing at Paul Ryan, it's always fun. There's another coup brewing.
Yes, there's always one.
Yes, the Freedom Caucus guys, Shavitz and his crew over on his oversight committee, the one that spent so much time with the Justice Department over the non-issue of Hillary Clinton's emails, has spent even more time over the non-issue of whether or not the IRS was targeting Tea Party groups.
They're still with this?
They're still with this.
Wow. They should try a fart in.
They want to have the IRS commissioner impeached.
Okay, you can do this.
You can do it. The House Judiciary Committee, run by Republicans, is not at all interested in impeaching
Problematic.
the IRS commissioner because they don't see anything there to impeach him over.
And that's is that their jurisdiction? I mean, it usually is because
impeachment starts with with that committee, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if they could make a claim. I mean, if they really wanted to engineer it, I wonder if they could say, well, the Oversight Committee overseeing IRS ought to...
they just want to skip the hearings and go straight to the floor.
Oh, okay. Well,
so they're threatening a privileged resolution.
You can do that, too.
Which is the thing that started the beginning of the end of John Boehner's speakership, if you'll remember.
Am I being forced to remember? Was it the IRS commissioner as well, or was it
another...
It
wasn't the IRS commissioner. I was trying to remember what it was.
Yeah, that's you forget these things. Maybe because part of the reason is they just aren't picking... I know they're very important to them, but I mean, in terms of really being in the national consciousness, we would not have forgotten if they had really picked something serious. It's a difficult way to see whether you have the critical mass of support behind you. You have to wait until later to see if everyone forgot. But it should be pretty clear at the time that people are almost, at least on the verge of going to the streets if you're talking about impeaching somebody.
Yeah.
No. So I'm not sure what that last one was.
It's, let's see.
I mean, might it have been
they were trying to vacate the chair.
Yeah.
That was the privileged resolution they were trying to bring against Boehner.
Yeah. I can't remember the reason for it, but it may have been accepting a budget deal.
I think it was the budget deal. I think... Gosh.
Really stuck with us. Well, because it was a serious issue. So this is interesting. This is one of the things that they can do. You can, any member, when you're talking about an impeachment, I guess, of anybody, because is a pretty heavy-handed tactic. I guess you can bring that, I mean, you can try, certainly. Anybody can show up on the floor and say, I have a privileged resolution.
Yeah.
And it should be noted that the parliamentarian can also say, that ain't privileged. That guy's wrong. Just gavel him away. And he'll say, but no, it's privileged. And you say, but it isn't, because I said it's not. I appeal the ruling of the chair. Fine. All 12 of you can vote yes.
Or 40.
Yeah. I say 12 because I think when chips are down, it's only about 12 of the Freedom Caucus that show up and do things like this.
That's true. They do have a hard time on follow-through.
But, all right, well, that's interesting.
I think the main reason Boehner resigned was just because he was sick of them, not because he felt pressured by them.
Yeah. Well, that's, I wonder how he's doing. I wonder what he thinks of this news.
I think he's probably having some fun with it.
I think so. He's been kind of outspoken when people can find him and get him to talk. He's been pretty outspoken about things.
Well, and here's a scoop. A couple of years ago, my brother ran into him in a Walmart here in Idaho.
Really?
He was getting paint because he has family in Idaho, so he spent some time here.
Huh.
And my brother, being interested in politics because he's a McCarter, said, so, how are things going? And they sort of got into it, and Boehner told him he saw eventually the Republican Party splintering.
Well, that does make for interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Orange paint?
I didn't ask.
Just wondering. But yeah, well, I don't think it's healthy for your skin. He gets the orange tone elsewhere, so picking up paint. Just a regular guy picking up paint in Idaho.
In an Idaho Walmart.
Well, he's true to the image, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's good. Good thing we kicked him out, say the Republicans. Regular guy. Oh, well. So, I see also one of your more recent pieces here, Ryan, to give in to House maniacs and give up on gun votes. Is this all part and parcel of the same inability to predict or control the Freedom Caucus, or is this a different splinter?
It absolutely is, because the NRA approved gun measures that Ryan was going to bring up to the floor. The same, basically the Cornyn measure that failed in the House or in the Senate. Mm-hmm. That's the one the NRA think is okay. That there's a waiting period before somebody on the watch list can get a gun.
Oh, all right. Well, that's what all right. Got it.
The NRA is okay with that because, it's just a waiting period and the guy can probably end up eventually getting the gun. It's just, you got to make people jump through hoops to make it happen.
All righty.
That is not protective enough of Second Amendment rights for the Freedom Caucus.
They don't like waiting.
They don't want any waiting whatsoever.
All right.
So they rebelled and said, no, we're not going to vote for this. And of course, Democrats aren't going to vote for it. So is Brian going to have a majority to pass this bill through? No. And beyond that, the Freedom Caucus was just raising hell about having this vote at all. So he caved. And it's not happening. So expect more measures from House Democrats to protest.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting. I mean, he was in a no-win situation, and so no surprise he doesn't win. That is to say, I mean, Democrats are going to protest regardless. If they pass the thing, Democrats would be protesting that too because they're opposed to it. But chickening out also is going to just draw there'll be a little different tenor to the protest. But that is pretty amazing. That's where the House Freedom Caucus is. They are to the right of the NRA on waiting periods.
Yep.
That's good. I wonder if they're on any lists. If they're not, they should be. Whatever happened to the old NRA mental health list?
Who would be at the top of my list? Louis Gohmert.
Oh, God.
Right next to him, Steve King.
Right. And didn't they, one of the two of them actually just recently said, hey, I'm going to go out and buy another gun as a result of, I don't even know
that was Gohmert.
Yeah? All right.
Hey,
well,
it may have been King.
Maybe. It doesn't really make
confused sometimes.
that much difference. I'm sure another gun on the pile won't make too much until their house is robbed. Then that's when it becomes a problem, and then somebody makes off with those guns. But there should be I think there's at least one member of the I got my new gun stolen from my house caucus in the Republican ranks. Although I guess she's on her way out, Renee Elmer's.
Renee Elmer's gun was stolen?
Yes. That was
of course.
A famous gun fail from, I don't know, a year or two ago. AR-15 stolen out of her garage, leaned up against the safe.
Because that's a good place for your AR-15.
We have a gun safe. It's next to, the gun was safe adjacent. That's the important point. Also, the garage door was left open. So, everything other than free guns inside sign taped to the door. They did all they could to secure that one.
Oh, Lord.
Anyway, so her gun was as safe as her seat in the end. Both were
yeah, the Koch brothers got hurt, didn't they?
Yep, she's out.
Or was it the pro-life people?
Oh, you know what? I don't even know.
It was the Koch brothers, I think.
You may be right. And it could be both.
Yeah. My goodness, the thought of any member of the House Republican Conference having an AR-15 is kind of terrifying.
Yeah, well, a lot of them have ceremonial ones of sorts, that they got awarded by local constituents. There was a picture somewhere along the line of maybe Trey Gowdy and somebody else holding one of those red, white, and blue star-spangled ones at some point.
Yeah.
Because good camouflage.
Did you see that the Capitol shut down day before yesterday, I think? We've had 2 shutdowns this week.
Yes.
Lockdowns, rather, because a staffer tried to enter with a gun.
I saw that one. I don't remember what caused the one yesterday, but 2 lockdowns in a week.
Yesterday was bad. Yesterday was a shooting near the Department of Labor.
Oh, yes. Okay. So that one actually, shots fired, but I guess they got the Capitol complex locked down for that.
Yeah.
Whose staffer had the gun?
I didn't follow deeply enough to find that out.
Okay. Yeah. It's a both sides issue. I've seen Democrats as well, right? A Webb staffer, Jim Webb staffer was once caught with Webb's gun,
which is marginally Democrat.
Yeah, right.
If we want to be truthful about this,
right, definitely true. And I don't know. That is what it is. Lots of gunplay on Capitol Hill. It's a hot spot.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I did see that we had the 2 lockdowns, and another thing I'm sort of nominally tracking online with the Lockdown Nation hashtag. Don't have the time to do it justice, but there's a lockdown somewhere, half a dozen daily, anywhere in the country. Yeah. So they're happening all over the place. It's a little bit of I don't know what a great statistic it is, because sometimes you get locked down for things like, okay, that doesn't seem to make any sense. For instance, even for when it's a federal security issue, shooting near the Department of Labor, lock down the Capitol. Okay, well, shooting anywhere, they want to be extra safe.
It's over on the Senate side. It's not that far.
Mm-hmm.
So
lock it. I don't think anybody missed them.
I don't think so. And, of course, because it's this Congress, business as usual. Yes. Didn't interrupt any proceedings of Congress.
No, nothing. We're not missing out on any new fantastic laws. Now, I guess we're set for break here, if not already wrapped up. What's the actual status of Congress?
Winding down. I mean, maybe they're going to have this impeachment vote in the House. You never know.
Wow.
The Senate's not going to do anything important. The Senate is not going to resolve the conflict over Zika funding, Zika partial funding. They may today pass the opioid abuse bill.
Okay.
Which, like Zika funding, went to conference where Republicans had all sorts of shenanigans and chopped up the bill, took pretty much everything out of it the Democrats in the Senate have fought to get in. So Democrats have been deciding whether or not they're gonna filibuster that one. I think probably they won't.
Yeah. I can understand that. And so smart politics for once on the part of Republicans. Republican senators, in terms of the workings of the Senate, are not completely clueless. You know that you grant votes on the floor for amendments that Democrats want to shoehorn into the bill. It gets the bill passed, and once it's in conference, you take everything out, and once it becomes known as the Zika bill, you know that your colleagues are between a rock and a hard place. The headline's going to be Democrats filibuster Zika bill.
Yeah.
So what do you want to do here?
Yeah.
And
that's what they're doing with this one. I think the opioid one will probably go through. There's enough poison in the Zika bill, literally.
Yes, right.
that they're not going to allow it.
Okay. Whew. Well, that's not going to reflect creditably on the institution, so change it. How about that?
And apparently I am seeing Adam Gentleson from Harry Reid's staff tweeting that McConnell and Ryan have refused to meet with the White House on Friday to resolve the Zika impasse. Their 7-week vacation is going to be starting Friday, so
right. Can't have that.
They're not going to hang around working on this.
Yeah, all right. Well, they could do it on the phone, but they're not going to do it.
Let's just be clear here that August is going to be 7 weeks long this year for Congress.
Right. Well, summer is coming, as they say in Game of Capitals, and it's going to be a long one this time. Wow.
Although, next week's going to not be much of a vacation for Paul Ryan, since he has to chair the Republican National Convention.
Yeah, I wonder how much time he'll actually spend up there. I'm sure he'll be...
As little as possible.
Yeah. He's looking for all sorts of opportunities to hand off the gavel to others. So
anybody who will take it, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay, well, that will be interesting. I forgot that. I mean, it really has snuck up on me, the Republican convention happening. Do they have any idea who's speaking still?
Ted Cruz said he'd speak.
Of course.
think thus far he's it. I haven't been paying a great deal of attention, but a lot of people have said, no, not me. We do have Ted Cruz. Word has it this morning that the whole Trump family showed up at Mike Pence's house. Mm-hmm. So we've got that happening.
Yes. Okay. Right. Yeah, I did see about that one, and the whole family. That's amazing. Doorbell ringing here.
Maybe they're showing up at your house.
Hi, Ivanka. It's good to see you. You know who this is? I know who this is. This is the service call that gave me the guaranteed window of 12 to 2. Is who this is. I'm positive of it, and then it's gonna. Now I can't get them back later.
Well, we can hang up now, and you can carry your microphone with you to the door.
I'm not doing it.
Or answer the door, and I can try to find something to talk about for the next 5 minutes.
I don't think it's going to work. I think I have to take them all around, and it's the termite warranty inspection. So I have to open the garage and take them out back and all that kind of stuff. And hey, man, you told me 12 to 2. You're going to get an earful when I call you. When you leave the "Sorry we missed you" slip out front
at 9:30.
Yeah, I mean
10:30.
10:30 for me, but yeah, I was pretty clear about the window that I needed because I know I do this every day, and I will also have to tell them that my doorbell gets rung about once a week by competitors swearing that they do a better job than you.
Well, there you go.
So yeah, go capitalism. I'll show you. Plus, I have beans here somewhere. If that was a legitimate tactic, I'm using it. And these guys spray pesticide for a living. So, well, I'm going to really have to up my game on this one. Okay. Well, I think they've stopped ringing the doorbell. Or at least...
Sorry about that.
That's
it's hardly my fault.
No, not at all. I mean, if you were in here, I still wouldn't answer the door. I have a show to do here. People don't appreciate these things. I mean, I think the listeners do. Although
I hope so.
They would like to move on from the who's at your door conversation and talk about something political or something like that. What now? I did mention it's short-staffed day at the various satellite offices of Daily
Well,
Coast
it's short-staffed 2 weeks, but this week particularly because we don't have our proofreader and Barb is on vacation, very well-deserved vacation, and Laura is on part-time maternity leave, so she's in for half days. So,
so that and Netroots Nation getting ready
we've got Meteor Blades at Netroots Nation. Hi, Tim. Have fun.
Yes, and get on the radio.
You
should call in, tell me what's going on, or as I got a lot of positive reaction from some of the folks at Netroots Radio who will be on Radio Row in I guess the exhibition hall there, and with equipment out and the opportunity for any attendees to stop by, say hi, of course, and maybe even jump on the radio live or record a segment, give your impression of what's going on there. And
absolutely, that would be a blast.
It would be very nice, and if failing that, if you're extraordinarily shy about those things, but are listening and are planning on attending, why not, at the end of the day, back in your hotel room, pick up the smartphone and use your recording apps there. Put a minute or two down of what's been interesting, what are the best panels you saw, who did you run into, what's it like being there. Email it to me. I'll play it. As long as you don't, as long as you're not one of those Sanders protesters farting. Largely, I think almost anything else. Even that I can air. Just be careful about what you say.
There you go.
So, I don't know. So, it being a short-staffed day...
I should also say that, since it kind of matters, Marcos is on vacation as well.
Yeah, okay. Well, that does put a dent in the front page posting. But I guess what that leads me to is with us a little short-staffed and people moving and traveling, do you know even what's up for the balance of the day, or what are we looking for the rest of the week on the front page?
Well, there's always Donald Trump to beat up on.
Yes.
We're going to be talking more about Zika. Probably a little bit more about Ruth Bader Ginsburg because she's not bowing down.
No, not going to stop with this. So.
Yeah. So, we'll find stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
Including what the Senate may or may not be doing
News
this
continues
day.
to happen. And then, but by the end of the week, I guess almost everybody will be on their way out of town from on the congressional scene. And not only just the regular August recess, but with the elections coming, they're hardly going to be back, I would think.
A short time in September, at which point we're going to have a continuing resolution to fund government. Because, September, fiscal year, government needs funding.
They're good at that.
Appropriations bills haven't passed. A budget hasn't passed the House.
But impeach the IRS guy.
This is what's fun for Paul Ryan to look forward to now that he's got this coup brewing.
Yeah, so...
What does he have to give these guys on impeaching the IRS commissioner in order to get his continuing resolution in the fall?
That's, maybe
Thus
he can
far,
say...
they've said, we're fine, continuing resolution, we'll keep government open, we're not going to do that in an election year. But can you believe anything these guys tell you?
No, and it only takes a few of them to convince the Freedom Caucus that it's a great idea to have a shutdown, default on the debt, impeach the guy whose job is to fund the government.
Darrell Issa has already been talking shutdown.
Oh, yeah?
Over the Clinton probe. Because Darrell Issa.
Okay, so the strategy is shut down the government over its failure to indict her. I guess so. So I want her indicted, but you can't go into the office to do it.
Right.
That's all right. You know what? I may shut down the government for that.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. A Democrat should say, you know what? We're for a government shutdown. We're going to close the Department of Justice. No. I guess strategically it doesn't work out very well, but
I don't think so.
I don't know. That doesn't seem to make any sense. IRS impeachment thing. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a way to spend the rest of your time, and they're not going to get it done probably before they break, but to come back in September and I'm sure the Freedom Caucus people will say this is a great election issue. People hate the IRS. And
because they live in a bubble.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating to me to see what these guys land on as the most important thing ever.
Well, they're an interesting breed.
They are an interesting breed, and I better mosey along and keep covering them.
Go see how interesting they really get. All right. Well, what can I tell you? This will be an interesting week, and certainly Donald Trump will provide us with some kind of fodder, and it's going to be a while before we find out how the fart-in comes off. So that can't be it either.
But, next Wednesday we'll have lots of Republican National Convention stuff to talk about,
yes,
I am sure.
That's true. And it'll be a little bit like a fart-off, really.
Yeah. It's going to be a lot like a fart-off.
I'm sorry, fart-in. I don't want to belittle the...
okay. A fart-in.
Right, yes. It's not an off. So it makes a big difference somehow. All right, well, thanks for dropping by. It's been an entertaining day for sure.
It has.
Always good to hear from you. And, I'm a little bit, at least it's nice to be able to speak with you and with Greg. And it's a little bit kind of like a good replacement for my normal, or used to be normal, interaction at Netroots Nation. At least I get to talk to you guys often.
Yes.
So that's no substitute for meeting everybody, but... okay, well, thanks again for coming by, and let us know what's going on, and we'll check in with you again next week, as usual.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Kagro.
Take care. Thanks very much. Joan McCarter, senior political writer at Daily Kos, on her way off to do exactly that, to seniorly politically write. That's such a great construction. What a sentence that was. How would I hey, I'm finally being asked to rate my call with Joan. It's usually something that happens with Greg. I would say that's an excellent call with Joan for any number of reasons. Alrighty. So let's see. Where were we with the other fun things that we were wanting to include in our show? I never did get to read all the way through. City Duck's piece here. Let me see if I can back up right to that. and have it at the ready. Oh, I also have another similar piece close by. Now, of course, I'm going to have to go back to Pocket to pick this one up, which shouldn't be a problem if everything functions correctly. Here we are, City Duck's piece here. A bit of hope. You remember this one where we started? Right-wing Breitbart reporter learns life lessons while locked up with BLM protesters. What were those life lessons? It's about time we figured that out. All right. So City Duck makes it possible to read what's going on at Breitbart without actually having to click on it. That is a great public service. The piece, My Weekend Incarceration in a Baton Rouge Prison. My weekend without Bernie in prison. In a country as divided as ours is, Stranahan has just posted an article, City Duck writes, that provides me with a rare feeling of hope that there are folks on the far right side of the fence that really do desire to breach the gap. Stranahan, a BLM critic, not Bureau of Land Management, that's right-wing white guys hate. Well, actually, they hate any BLM, right? But the Bundys hate the Bureau of Land Management, and probably also Black Lives Matter, but that's not their main topic of interest. But I always get confused about those two things. Stranahan, a BLM critic and documentary filmmaker. I wonder, and I'm not sure, does City Duck know Stranahan's background or not? We'll see whether that becomes clear in the piece. He has posted an article that offers a profoundly human perspective on his incarceration with BLM protesters in Baton Rouge and the hope he gained when aided by the National Lawyers Guild, an organization of which he is profoundly critical because, of course, when he made his switch over to the Breitbart side, they gave him a list of here's who you hate now, and that had to be on the list. While I don't want to spoil, in air quotes, the article, a few excerpts are worth highlighting. Thank you. First, after relaying how he, BLM protesters, and other media members were unjustly arrested by the Baton Rouge police, he explains, and we quote, "After an hour or two in this jail facility, I was handcuffed again and transferred with 11 others to the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison. Here, we were put into a 20 by 20 foot cell, and gradually the number of protesters in that cell grew to about 30. At no point had I been told that I was arrested, what I was being specifically detained for, or informed of my rights." It's tough getting arrested out there, ain't it? I was the only reporter in my group. The protesters were all black, except for one, a good-natured leftist named Sean, who had come from New Orleans for solidarity. At least he was in the right state to begin with. Where did you come from, Lee? His shirt was ripped, his knee bloodied, and his face bruised from his run-in with the police, where he said he'd been tackled in the grass. Despite this, Sean was in a relatively good mood and was the only protester in the group there who had any previous protesting experience. Next excerpt. After the first couple of hours, Sean, the white leftist from New Orleans, was able to get the number of the National Lawyers Guild in Baton Rouge. And in bold here, I don't know whose bold this is, City Ducks or Lee's, I have been a major critic of the NLG, the institutional left group that was founded by communist attorneys and that had protected people in groups that I find repugnant. That being said, in this case, thank God for the National Lawyers Guild, because me. Sean gave me the group's number, and I decided to call them and update them on the situation in the cell. Did he pass on any of his well-founded criticisms? That was a great opportunity to do so, but I guess Lee didn't stand on principle at that point. At that time, we had been given no information at all by the authorities and had no idea what was going on in the outside world. He's been in jail for like a couple of hours. I don't know how. I have no idea what's going on in the outside world. Your world scares and frightens me. I'm just an unfrozen caveman progressive who writes for Breitbart for some reason. I called the NLG number, and they were all set up to take a call from jail, where you have to call collect or on a calling card. I spoke to the person who answered at 2 a.m. and told him who I was and that I was a reporter for Breitbart News. I gave him an update on what I know. That was easy to do, even at low cost, at collect rates, I'm sure. They told me that they had a team of about 20 lawyers currently working to get everyone freed and that they were planning to provide bond for everybody. They said, what a bunch of communists, see? Told you, he's right. They said that they had found out most people were being charged with obstructing a roadway and that the bond should be about $250. I asked the other inmates, they're not quite inmates at that point, but okay, for their attention for a moment. Everyone, please, I would like to white-splain bail to you. Then explain to them who the National Lawyers Guild was and what was going on. Everyone was appreciative just to have information and to know that people who were actually out there aware of what was going on and working on the case. Do I wish there was a conservative pro-liberty legal group out there that I could have called? You're darn right I do. But there was no such group involved in what was going on in Baton Rouge. Should have called Judicial Watch. They would have got you. Federalist Society, surely. I'll also mention that when my friend and colleague Brandon Darby went to pay my $250 bond hours later, he found out that the NLG had already paid it. Had simply paid everybody's bond. Because communists. Breitbart News will be sending the National Lawyers Guild a check for $250 to reimburse them, but I appreciate the gesture and consistency covering my bond, even though they knew I was a harsh critic of theirs. I'm not certain. They could have guessed maybe by, Breitbart, you'd probably be a harsh critic of ours, but we don't care. We don't read it. This dialogue with the Lawyers Guild continued over the next several hours as they took the names and contact information of everyone who had been arrested and continued to update us with information. It's not a dialogue about his criticisms of them. It's a dialogue about, whatever, kid. Here, you're one of the 20? Fine, I'm paying bond. Shh, leave me alone, I'm working. Stranahan, City Duck tells us, relays in much greater detail his interactions with BLM protesters, his arrest, incarceration, and the lessons he learned. I could not help but smile when I finished this article on a right-wing site, but this time it was with real pleasure, not cynicism or mockery. Oops. All right. Well, I'll provide that part. Why? Because this was a rare time when the lessons Stranahan learned were ones with which I agreed. Really, a rare time when he learns a lesson, period, will be fine. See? Cynicism and mockery. I deliver when I say I'm going to bring it. So, back to excerpts from Stranahan. Is there a moral to the story? Good question. When some people heard I'd been locked up with the protesters, they expressed concerns for my safety based on the idea that being a conservative writer with Breitbart might put me at risk. Those would be the Breitbart people. I never felt in danger one time, nor was I threatened in any way. And they never asked me for more iced tea either. I made it very clear to everyone I met who I was, what I did for a living, and what I believed. To believe, good Lord, nothing pleases Lee Stranahan more than telling everyone who he is and what he does for a living. I treated every person I met, protesters and police, with respect and humanity. I didn't make anyone earn this basic level of respect or approach them with a chip on my shoulder, like the Negroes do. Whatever. I'm sure. It seems like the subtext of this. I looked people in the eye and I listened. Wow. When I see police and protesters clashing in the streets, I don't see the problems that they both face being solved, nor do I see color, I'm sure. A new approach is clearly needed, one that combines active listening and basic respect with an uncompromising commitment to the truth, not just in words, but in action. City Duck concludes, this article gives me a bit of hope I didn't think existed. And to the extent that it does, I am glad for you. And I'm glad that you covered this. Thanks very much, City Duck, for bringing this to my attention. And, my goodness, it brought out the cynicism and mockery in me, but I'm glad you drew some inspiration for it. Wherever you can find it, I will allow for it. I don't mock you. Okay. So let's see. Moving on. Other things I wanted to include in today's show. We'll wrap things up. It should be an interesting Thursday and Friday as we get around to it. Let's see. Other pieces that I think were worthy of inclusion. Let's say, alongside the Texas gun culture piece from Rolling Stone that Greg brought to our attention, I got a couple others here. Washington Post piece that will count against maybe I can read it out of pocket so it doesn't count against my total. Brian Fung, if I have it correct here, the NRA's internal split over Philando Castile. And I'm going to go back to the Philando rather than the Philando pronunciation. Philando was my, I think, bad guess, and I spent a little bit of time last night trying to find news reports to see if anybody pronounced it out loud and in a creditable way. Everybody says Philando, like Philando Calrissian. I don't know whether that's really right, because I guess it's a weird pronunciation, because Philando is like philanderer, which you would think you would want to be avoiding. And also, I think I have seen Diamond Reynolds, his girlfriend who was with him in the car, just refer to him as Phil for short, which, probably how it went in day to day. And Philando, or I guess the Philando is the same. So that doesn't really help us in either way. But I'm just uncomfortable with Philando. But maybe that's what it is. And if any of you have heard differently, please let me know. I would love to know from really I would love to be able to ask him directly, but he's dead, unfortunately. But really, I would like to at least get his name right, given that we're so concerned with what happened to him. Anyway, let me take a look here. The more important, I think, of the issues. The NRA's internal split over Castile's death after a Minnesota police officer fatally shot a black man, the one we were talking about just a moment ago. On Wednesday, gun control advocates weren't the only ones criticizing the NRA. Some of the blowback was coming from within the organization. It's one of those horror movies. The blowback is coming from inside the organization. The NRA is facing internal division as its members argue that the group did not do enough to defend gun owners' rights by speaking out on behalf of Philando Castile of Falcon Heights, Minnesota, who was shot to death during a traffic stop. Castile had a valid permit to carry his gun. He also repeatedly informed the officer who shot him that he was armed in an attempt to head off a misunderstanding about that gun. Still, Castile was killed by police, prompting outrage that following the rules was not enough to save him from a violent death. And remember, this is a different set of rules, but the NRA members love nothing better than to point out to all the rest of us idiots that if you just follow the rules, you'll be okay. Well, that's usually them talking about the finger off the trigger, don't point the gun at anything you're not willing to destroy rules, but there's also the rules of how to engage with cops. Be respectful, inform them of this. That applies to black guys. I mean, it's supposed to apply to everybody, but we've seen enough YouTube open carry protesters to know that they're not exactly treating the police with respect. They treat them with, I guess, mock respect. They say sir to them, but in a voice dripping with, sarcasm and cynicism, of course. Sir, I don't have to show you my ID. I mean, how do you say that that's treating them with respect? I don't know. But anyway, this is a pretty serious issue inside the NRA. People who thought that there really was, regardless of the color of the gun owner, a set of principles to which the NRA was sticking. And I guess this is the first time that rank and file members who are true believers are beginning to find out, one, they might not be who they say they are, and two, the NRA really isn't and hasn't been for about a decade or more about individual gun owners and gun owner rights. It is a gun manufacturer's trade representative group and little more. So they don't have, there's no financial interest in standing up for Philando Castile here. It might even, they probably thought the leadership, who were largely probably white and a little bit, somewhere between a little bit and a lot racist, thought our members aren't going to be interested in this guy because black. But apparently they were wrong, and I guess that's good news. The NRA appeared to drag its feet on the Falcon Heights shooting, to return to the Washington Post piece, taking more than a day and a half to address it publicly, which, again, should have been a lot quicker. The group obliquely referred to reports from Minnesota when they posted their statement on their Facebook page, taking great care to go to Facebook rather than having a press conference. It neither named Castile directly nor took a position on the shooting. It is important for the NRA not to comment while the investigation is ongoing, the organization said. Rest assured, because everyone rests assured with the NRA will have more to say once all the facts are known. From the NRA's Facebook page, we have this quote, as the nation's largest and oldest civil rights organization. Interesting. The NRA proudly supports the right of law-abiding Americans to carry firearms for defense of themselves and others regardless of race, religion, or sexual orientation. The reports from Minnesota are troubling and must be thoroughly investigated. In the meantime, it is important for the NRA not to comment while the investigation is ongoing. Why? Rest assured, the NRA will have more to say once the facts are known. Unlike its reaction to the Minnesota shooting, the NRA released a statement hours after the attack in Dallas early Friday morning left 5 police officers dead. The Dallas NRA statement did not mention the officers killed in the line of duty, emphasizing instead the right of law-abiding Americans to carry firearms for defense of themselves and others. An interesting approach. The NRA's approach bore a close resemblance in tone to its statement after last month's mass shooting in Orlando. 2 days after the massacre, a lobbyist for the gun rights group wrote an op-ed in USA Today going on the offensive against stricter firearms regulation. "Destroy radical Islam, not the right of law-abiding Americans to protect themselves," wrote Chris Cox, executive director of the NRA Institute for Legislative Action. Cox's broadside against greater restrictions was viewed as tone-deaf by many gun control advocates, while gun proponents lined up on the other side. This time, however, the NRA faces criticism from its members, who argue that the group did not do enough to defend gun owners' rights by speaking out on behalf of Castile. The delay in addressing Castile's death, compared with the promptness of the NRA statement after Dallas, has sparked complaints of a double standard, ding, in how the organization defends gun owners. Your lack of message concerning the Castile case disappoints me and makes me question my membership. Marco Galologic, wow, I guess is maybe the pronunciation, wrote on the NRA's Facebook page, "What do I pay fees for if you do not represent gun owners and our rights?" I don't know if that's really the basis of the fees. But anyway, your silence is causing NRA members such as myself to question/wonder exactly what you do and don't stand for, Facebook user Bruce Johnston wrote. He, in fact, wrote, Philando Castile had a valid concealed weapons permit but was shot and killed. You must respond to this terrible crime and support all people's rights to gun ownership and punish those who ignore this right. Your silence is causing NRA members such as myself to question/wonder what exactly you do and don't stand for. Your response to the terrible Dallas shootings came very quickly. That sentiment was reflected across social media this week, with NRA members and non-members alike demanding that the group voice its support for Castile. A couple of tweets from folks about that. As a lifetime member, I'd like to see you support him and his Second Amendment rights. As a life member, please condemn the murder of Philando Castile sooner rather than later. License to carry and no felony record. This is important to some of these guys. Other firearms groups have reacted with alarm to the shooting. On Thursday, the Second Amendment Foundation, a gun rights group based in Bellevue, Washington, said that exercising our right to bear arms should not translate to a death sentence over something so trivial as a traffic stop for a broken taillight, which wasn't even true. As David Graham wrote in the Atlantic magazine, U.S. history is strewn with cases of uneven observance of the Second Amendment, and with some Americans, mainly whites, benefiting disproportionately from the law over others. That, by the way, is a piece that I have set aside before for discussion, and we'll have to save for another day, of course, as we're getting towards the end of our own airtime. But that and a few other things that I think will fill in some of the historical blanks on gun control that we've hinted at in the past, but we'll give a more coherent narrative on, I guess, pushing that to Thursday and Friday consideration. Anyway, we'll conclude here with the Washington Post piece. Those criticizing the NRA believe the advocacy group should be protesting Castile's death as an unjust violation of the Constitution. Philando Castile had a valid concealed weapons permit but was shot and killed, wrote Dennis Gesker on Facebook. As an NRA member, I urge you to take a strong position in favor of this man. The NRA did not, of course, immediately respond to requests for comment by the Post, not much less requests for comment by Facebook users who wanted to know where the hell they were on all this. All right, so let's see. We've got just a few minutes left here, and of course today with Wink on travel, there is no after show to mop up for all the issues that we left aside in order to talk about the fart in. So that gives us a little bit of a trouble. You'll have to probably read the newspaper. Anyway, tomorrow I'm sure Greg Dworkin will catch us up on those headlines as well. However, it's not like the station goes off the air when I'm done. As a matter of fact, here's a piece of station news from Justice. We're proud to announce the great Randy Rhoads debuts today on Netroots Radio. That will be at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific, for those of you behind the times, being Pacific Coasters as you are. But a good reminder for those of you who, for whatever reason, don't listen to Netroots Radio all damn day long. Take a moment, take a look at the scheduled lineup. It's going to be a little bit different, of course, this week with Netroots Nation happening, and things will be sort of catch as catch can, since there'll be so much live programming, original material available to us. But the general everyday schedule is rather surprising, and a lot of times, for those of you who are having difficulty consistently keeping what little progressive talk radio there is on the air available to you locally. And I know a lot of you have maybe patched together systems where you can stream it from the headquarters. You know, Randy Rhoads, of course, put our own show streaming live, no longer dependent on being carried by individual radio stations. But guess what? A lot of them are all captured here in the Netroots Radio lineup and made available to you each day. Desktop computer, on your phone, wherever you are, at home, on the go, in the office. Very convenient. Of course, as I mentioned, no after show today, but another session of Open Court, as you may have taken the opportunity to listen to yesterday. Free-form selections of music, mixes, and news by Special Agent DJ Justice of the Justice Department. There will be order. I love the tagline. Thanks, Justice, for updating us on that. We'll wrap things up then at this point for the day. Good luck and safe travels to those of you making your way to Netroots Nation. Again, do take up, if you will, the invitation to just pick up the smartphone that you're no doubt traveling with already and record a few minutes. Tell us what it was like. Tell us about your flight. What did they serve? Did you have good, was it peanuts? Is that even allowed anymore? Should it be? We can discuss food allergy issues on the program as well. Tell us about your favorite panels. Tell us about your favorite place for drinks at Netroots Nation. Tell us about the weirdest person you met at Netroots Nation, I guess, if you want to, and don't embarrass them by name. But give us your impressions. Tell us what it's like to be on the ground there. I'd be very interested in having those, and you can email them to me, and it's easy to do. You can contact me on Twitter and ask me for my email address if you like. Of course, you know how to find me on Twitter. It's at KagroX, K-A-G-R-O-X. And guess what? How do you find me on email? KAGROX at gmail.com. It's an easy thing to do. Mail those files to me. We'll find a way to get them on the air. Remember, watch your language, because we are, of course, simulcast on We Act Radio right here in the Washington, D.C. area. 1480 AM if you're looking for an alternative way of picking up the show. Also, a reminder, we are now posting our podcasts at YouTube. Very easy to do if you're wanting to catch up on things or missed a podcast while you're on travel. This is an easy way to find it on your smartphone and play along if you don't have one of those smartphone apps like, say, Stitcher or whatever. And hey, it gives you an opportunity to subscribe to a YouTube channel. You always want to
From Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Yes, you have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show, and that's the easiest way to find it on YouTube, by the way. Just go to YouTube and search Kagro in the Morning. You'll find the last couple days' worth of podcasts up there. And going forward, they're going to be up there every single day. Why not subscribe to the station and find out whether there's actually any way to help support us that way through annoying ads?